We are live right now. Just going to wait a second for people to connect, sending out a tweet saying that I'm live, etc., all of that stuff. Going to be talking about, what am I going to be talking about? I will be following up a lot of questions in the aftermath of our story about the entire pedophilia Milo Yiannopoulos thing, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit, and I have some more thoughts, and a lot of it relates to this concept of identity politics, etc., which I will be dealing with. Also, we'll preview some of what's happening on tomorrow's program. We'll take some questions from the chat. Super chat is enabled if people want to use it. Also, we'll be doing live shout outs and thank yous to everybody who signs up at davidpakman.com/membership during the live stream. And I want to talk about a little bit about what's going on Reddit. So there's kind of a lot going on. So since we went on today, Milo Yiannopoulos has indeed resigned from his position at Breitbart. And, you know, sort of expected. It seemed kind of obvious that maybe at this point this was even too much for Breitbart. And for people who haven't been following it, sort of, I call him alt-right darling, although some people have been writing in and saying Milo's not really alt-right. In any case, Milo Yiannopoulos has sort of been a darling of the alt-right and a big Trump supporter. And his big thing has been because of his identity as a gay man who dates black men but is still a conservative who likes Trump. His thing has been, oh, the left can't write me off or play identity politics with me in the way that they can with some other people. And of course, the problem with this is that Milo's entire thing, his entire shtick, was also based on identity politics, right? Because Milo Yiannopoulos was not saying anything even remotely unique or interesting. What was interesting about it to the right was because of his identity. And it sort of is I don't know if it's a double standard or hypocrisy or just sort of ironic that someone who denounces identity politics in the way that he sees the left doing it was only popular because of identity politics. Now, I'm talking kind of in the past tense, but I don't necessarily think that it's over for Milo. In fact, it's possible that he will be able to turn this entire bad press thing around and play up the victim card and maybe even turn this around into something more. I want to point out something else. The fact that Milo has this long history of saying thinly veiled anti-Semitic things and transphobic things, etc., and the right didn't care, it's almost like, okay, well, now that he's saying it's okay or not a bad thing for 28-year-olds to have sex with 13-year-olds, and by the way, what's this thing called consent anyway? Now, all of a sudden, it's too much for some on the right, including the American Conservative Union, which runs the CPAC conference. But the fact that all that other stuff happened and they didn't care actually tells us a lot about the American right as well, okay? So main takeaway for me is lived by criticizing identity politics, and now all of a sudden turns out identity politics was the only thing that made him interesting to the right because they could say, hey, look at this gay guy who agrees with Trump and doesn't believe that things that feminism is cancer, as he would famously say, etc., etc. So live by identity politics, I guess die by identity politics. I'm curious, though, if people in the chat want to comment on whether they think this is the end of Milo's career or not. Feel free to comment. And I don't know, unless this boils over into even more of a story, I don't know how much I'm going to talk about it. And I've known Milo loosely, casually, for many years. I mentioned on the show today, I basically had 3 direct interactions with Milo many years ago before the, and for people saying, David, he quit already, I started this stream off by saying, yes, he has resigned from Breitbart, but the question is his career as sort of like a guy speaking about politics in public over? Years ago, Milo was scheduled to be on the David Pakman show, and we were going to talk about trolling, online trolling, of all things. And we had the interview scheduled, confirmed it with him. He did not write back. And on the day of, he did what we call a no call, no show, which is he's just not on Skype at the agreed upon time. He doesn't communicate that he needs to reschedule, just doesn't show up. Eventually, I think it was a couple days later, responded that he had been ill and wasn't able to let me know that he wouldn't be available. A couple years later, Gamergate happens. I have Milo on the program to talk about Gamergate-related stuff. We also talk a little bit about his views on transgenderism, which he believes is a mental or psychiatric disorder. And that interview did pretty well. And then after that, he would every once in a while tweet about content related to Gamergate that we did. There were some interviews I did that he liked, some interviews I did that he didn't like. And that's basically been it. I tried to have him back on the program maybe 6 months ago, didn't write back. I guess he's probably, and I'm not saying this sarcastically, he probably became too big for the show and had other stuff to do. And that was sort of the last that I heard from Milo. And, you know, on the one hand, there's a contingent of my audience who really doesn't care about Milo at all and tells me that. At the same time, there's a contingent in my audience who clearly is interested in Milo because I get emails all the time about it. Right now on our Reddit discussion forum on the front page, there are let's see, there's a lot of Milo threads, which I have not started. This is our audience. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 threads, 7 of the top 25 threads right now at davidpakman.com/Reddit, which, by the way, I encourage you to subscribe to, are about Milo. So clearly some people in our audience are interested, all right? Okay, so that's it as far as the Milo stuff is concerned right now. I do want to say a big thank you to Emmett Gamble Jr., who just signed up for membership at davidpakman.com/membership. This is mostly, this is the primary source of funding for the David Pakman Show. Every day you have me hosting and Pat producing and Noah doing segment research and the moderators on Reddit and our interns. Everybody is working to produce this show. And it's all mostly funded by membership. So check it out, davidpakman.com/membership. We do have a major discount coupon code, which is iVoted17, and you can use that code to get 40% off. And that's all with peace and love. I have no problem with people using the discount code. So big thank you to Emmett Gable Jr., who just signed up. Okay, tomorrow on the show, here's something interesting. Over the last several weeks, I did a few stories about whether Donald Trump can read, all right? And obviously, I don't think Donald Trump literally can't read. I think that his reading is of sort of diminished capacity, and he's not really reading at the level you would imagine an educated, wealthy adult would be able to read at. The stories have done really, really well. 8-9 million views in total across the different platforms and different clips that we did. But a number of French media outlets have picked up on the stories about whether Donald Trump can read, and I'm going to be playing some of the clips, and it's a great clip from a program called C'est à vous in France, where they play some of my clip, and they actually have like a side-by-side, so the panel there's cameras on the panel watching my clip, and their reactions are hilarious, and they have a smiling picture of me on the big screen behind them. So I'm going to play some of those clips for you tomorrow. And for somebody correcting me and saying it's c'est à vous, no, it's not. It's a play on words. It's literally just the letter C. In any case, this is not really a show about French. And a few different French viewers letting me know about this, which is great, and I appreciate. So we'll talk about that tomorrow on the show. Also, you might remember that before he was inaugurated, and really even before he was elected, but also before he was inaugurated, Donald Trump talked about how he won't be taking vacations, he won't be taking a presidential salary, he won't really be leaving the White House, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And as it turns out, Donald Trump has been taking vacations basically every single weekend, almost every single weekend since being inaugurated. And he has since spent more, well, let me correct that. Trump hasn't really spent anything. Taxpayers have spent more during Donald Trump's first month as president than they did during President Obama's entire first year as president, okay? And we're going to be digging into the numbers tomorrow. And again, it's hypocritical on a number of levels. Number one, President Trump would criticize President Obama for taking vacations. Hypocritical. Number two, President Trump claims to be from the party of fiscal conservatism. And he is the guy spending in 1 month what President Obama spent in a year on vacations. And number three, direct contradiction to what Trump himself said he would do, which was not take vacations, hardly ever leave the White House, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so we're going to be talking about that on the program tomorrow. Before I continue with that, on that note, big thank you to Jason Maher. Jason Maher just signed up at davidpakman.com/membership with the coupon code IVoted17. And he now gets all of the great member benefits, including if you normally watch like the 3 to 5 minute clips on YouTube, members get the full hour show, the entire 1 hour show, minus the 10 minutes of commercials as one long video. No waiting for our short clips to publish. You get the entire thing, usually around 4 p.m. Eastern. As a member. We also do an entire additional show called The Bonus Show just for our paid subscribers, and members get that. And Jason Maher now, who signed up at davidpakman.com/membership with coupon code IVoted17, gets all that stuff for 40% off, okay? Isaiah Rowe has sent a $5 super chat saying, what Democratic ticket do you think could best defeat Trump come 2020? I'm glad that you asked this, not because I want to answer it specifically. But because it is important to realize that we shouldn't be focusing on that right now. And I say this with total peace and love. By the way, that's not a leaky patch on my ceiling, that's a speaker. I say this with total peace and love. We have 2017, we have 2 governor's races to focus on. We have the 2018 midterms to focus on. We have the preparation for the 2020 census and so much other stuff going on, right? This is not the time to think about the 2020 ticket for the Democrats. And I would actually argue we can't know today who the best candidates would be for the 2020 Democratic ticket. So I would actually not think about that right now. I would focus on the other things that are going on. There's really a lot that we can think about. Thank you, before I move on, to Robert Gumtoe. Robert Gumtoe has just signed up at davidpakman.com/membership, also using the coupon code IVoted17. Robert opting for the yearly membership, which makes membership only $3 a month. Jason Maher opting for the monthly membership, which makes the membership $3.60 per month. The coupon code IVoted17 works for all memberships. Okay, also tomorrow, this is such a weird thing. We had so many stories to deal with today that this was relegated to tomorrow. We have there's pictures of people that were on stage behind Trump at this press conference or rally that he did in Florida. Okay, and they're holding signs that say "Blacks for Trump 2020," and they were put up on stage. Apparently, the Trump team didn't realize that these are extremist lunatics. And they went up on stage and held up these signs. And when you go to the website, Blacks for Trump 2020, and I'm actually going to try to pull it up right now, Blacks for Trump 2020. When you try to go to the website, it redirects to another site, or at least it did. Now it doesn't seem to be redirecting. It's a total conspiracy nut website, and it seemed that the Trump team had no idea whatsoever that they were promoting absolute and utter insanity. And it appears as though now that website doesn't redirect anymore. No, it does. It still redirects to honestfact.com, and it is absolutely and utterly insane. And it's, once again, poor preparation from the Trump team. My guess is they were like, hey, black people. At one point we were polling statistically 0% in Ohio among black people. If black people show up, we've got to put them on stage. And they did, and it was absolute and total nuttiness. And we'll be talking about that on the program tomorrow. Brody Andrew Mulligan has sent a $2 super chat saying, advice for progressives and action plans for 2017. Yeah, so we've been outlining this on the program, and I'm advising a combination of, number one, staying on top of what elections there are, and there are 2 gubernatorial elections that are happening in 2017. They are, I believe, Virginia and one other, which is escaping me right now. New Jersey, Virginia and New Jersey. Okay, so progressives can get involved there, whether it's financially or as it ramps up phone banking or whatever the case may be. And we also need to be working at the local level. This is an area where Republicans crush progressives. And this doesn't matter whether we're talking about actual Democrats or just the more progressive option in a Republican primary. There are also local elections where party designation doesn't exist. It's just you're not running with a party designation, but we can figure out as voters who's the more progressive candidate. There are many opportunities to start working at the local level. And if you want to understand why Republicans control so many elections at the state level, then you need to look at what is happening with state senators, state representatives. Remember that lunatic that I used to interview with some frequency, former Navy chaplain Gordon Klingenschmidt? He was a state representative in Colorado for some time, which is insane. I mean, we're talking about a guy who believes that you can exorcise, not exercise, but exorcise the gay out of someone. And he was actually elected in Colorado because it's not that difficult in many of these districts to get yourself elected. You've got some incumbent who's basically been riding incumbency and the power of incumbency for a very long time, and you can make it happen, okay? You can make it happen at the state level. Let's go through a couple super chats. Stuff has sent a 20 Mexican peso message just saying, greetings from Mexico. Well, thank you. Very, very nice to hear from you. Storage has sent a $2 Australian super chat saying, consider doing a segment on effective altruism. Okay, I will make a note of that right now because that sounds like an interesting idea to look into. I will check into that after the chat. So a lot happening there in the chat. Let me say a major, major thank you to two new David Pakman Show members, Jacob Ball, who has signed up with the coupon code IVoted17 at davidpakman.com/membership, as well as Clarence Penn, who signed up at davidpakman.com/membership, both opting for the yearly membership, which works out to just $3 a month. That's effectively half of the normal price, okay? So IVoted17. You can use the coupon code as much as you want. Also, here's another story I'm going to be dealing with tomorrow. There's a really interesting article called Trump Wasn't a Real CEO. No wonder his White House is disorganized. And this is from the Washington Post. And I encourage you to check it out. And it makes a number of interesting points about, you know, Donald Trump had a number of preconceived notions coming in about what it's like to be president. And part of that included the idea that he's just going to be able to do whatever he wants, sort of the idea of absolute power as president of the United States. And as we mostly know, I know that there are some trolls in the chat who you know, would be likely to call me a cuck or make anti-Semitic comments. Maybe they don't realize it, but most of our reasonable followers probably realize this. Running a corporation is not like running the government. And so we've seen Donald Trump frustrated by the reality that he can't run the government like he ran a business. What this Washington Post article is actually saying is that there is not really a good track record of Trump being CEO. In other words, Trump was kind of a mess as CEO, and other people were really making a lot of those decisions. And that we're seeing that reflected in many ways in what's going on in the Trump administration, and sort of part of the chaos is not that things are going so-called wrong for Trump, it's just that this is how Trump runs it, right? And that's just exactly what we would expect. So we'll be talking about that on the show tomorrow. There's a ton of other stories, and this is sort of a little bit of behind the scenes in terms of what our production process is. I have right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 other possible stories for tomorrow. And this doesn't even include what will inevitably happen at 3 a.m. tonight that I'll wake up to tomorrow in the morning. We only have time for 7 to 8 stories on the show, so I don't actually know what else will be on the program today. We could talk about, there's an interesting story that the Trump administration wants to change how the trade deficit is calculated, and you can imagine Donald Trump has made a big deal out of how he is going to fix the trade deficit with Mexico. And it seems that one possible way to fix it that he's come up with is just to change how you define the trade deficit. And this is so hypocritical. All during the Obama White House, we heard from Republicans, we can't trust unemployment numbers under Obama because he's messing with the numbers. Of course, the reality is that unemployment numbers have been measured in the exact same way for a long time, and it's a matter of, are we looking at the U3, are we looking at the U6, etc. Now, all of a sudden, Donald Trump actually wants to change how we measure an economic indicator, that of the trade deficit, clearly to make it easier for him to argue that he has made America great again with regard to the trade deficit. So this is, I read a piece by the co-founder of Real Clear Politics today, and we talked about it on the bonus show, where he said, everything can't be a scandal with Trump because if everything is a scandal, nothing is a scandal. There's a sort of desensitizing to what's going on, and some people in the chat are talking about this. How do we decide what to focus on, right? I did a story today, and I hope you'll take a look at it, which is called Donald Trump is the Perfect Straw Man, because truly, all of the crazy stuff that Donald Trump is doing is taking attention away from really, really bad stuff that Republicans in the House and Senate are doing. And this relates to our environment. This relates to so many different things that are just happening unnoticed because of what's going on with Donald Trump. Okay, so a little bit of a preview of what's going to be going on tomorrow. Let me thank a lot of people in the chat saying they've received their David Pakman Show coffee recently and that they are loving it. I've not received one negative review about David Pakman Show coffee, and people are loving it. I'm going to do some videos soon in my kitchen of me actually brewing up some of the coffee. We've got an espresso blend, and we also have a drip coffee blend. If you have your own coffee grinder, you can get it whole bean. If you want it all the way down to a Turkish coffee grind, you can do that. It's all at davidpakman.com/gear. And yes, we have a coffee partnership with Blue Fire Coffee Roasters. Patrick Maloney from Blue Fire Coffee Roasters is roasting the coffee. I went out there. It's in Hopedale, Massachusetts, about 40 to 300 minutes from Boston, depending on rush hour traffic. And it is roasted and shipped to you. It is delivered fresh. It is absolutely fantastic. And you can check that out at davidpakman.com/gear. This is not Big Coffee, by the way. A lot of people saying, oh, David sold out to Big Coffee, sounding like Alex Jones. But indeed, it is not Big Coffee. It's quite the opposite. It's Patrick and a very, very small team that are roasting the coffee for us. Okay, Carol Ann Newsom has sent a $5 super chat saying, I think Republicans won't rein in Trump because they want to see how far he pushes the line. Thoughts? You're sort of suggesting, Carol, that there's sort of a curiosity from Republicans about what might it be like if we just let Donald Trump do absolutely whatever he wants. How crazy could it get? I think that there's a different reason that Republicans may not rein in Donald Trump. Number one, Trump's approval rating is still roughly in the 40-ish% range, okay? At that percentage, it's probably still useful to Republicans to not publicly denounce Donald Trump so that they don't risk being alienated during the re-election campaign for every single House seat, which is up for re-election every 2 years in 2018. If Trump goes down into the low 30s or even 20s, then I think you will see more Republicans distancing. There's also another idea, which is Republicans may be giving Trump enough rope to hang himself so that then they can not necessarily impeach him, but basically create a de facto situation where he ends up sort of being forced to resign. And that's another idea. $5 super chat from BW85. BW85 saying, have you listened to Sam Harris's latest podcast with Republican David Drum I don't know if that's actually David Drum or you mean David Frum. I'm not sure. Discussing Trump. If not, I recommend it to you and everyone. I have not seen that, or heard it rather. I've not listened to much of Sam Harris's podcast, but it sounds interesting, and some people in the chat are saying that it's worth checking out. Okay, thank you to a bunch of new members. We have I wonder if this is the same Luke Vargas that I interviewed on the program today. Luke Vargas was on the show today, and we have a new member named Luke Vargas. So thank you to Luke Vargas. Thank you also to, oh boy, this is now going to be tough. Zhao Jiyu. I hope I'm not butchering that name. I believe it's Zhao Jiyu, who signed up with the 40% discount code I voted 17 at davidpakman.com/membership. So big thank yous. I don't think I missed anybody there. Isaiah Rowe is upping the ante. Sent a $5 super chat earlier. Now sending a $10 super chat saying, what do you think of official historical agencies always having Lincoln, Washington, and FDR as the top three, and now recently having Reagan at 11th and Obama at 12th? This is as like top presidents. I did see that list. I have a Facebook friend who is obsessed with presidential history, and he often does like his own top presidents thing on President's Day, and he pointed that out. Listen, I mean, it's so hard at this point to say what list of the top presidents sort of makes sense. Washington, there's bias to the first, and George Washington is the first president. We're going to be biased in favor of and more likely to say George Washington was one of the top presidents. Lincoln for his involvement with the Emancipation Proclamation and the Civil War. That's a huge thing. So, of course, it's very, very common that Abraham Lincoln shows up on those lists. FDR governed during World War II, governed longer than any other president, and also was responsible for the era which included the baby boom and sort of the New Deal and so many other aspects of society that we now sort of take for granted as integral parts of America, of the fabric of America. So it sort of makes sense. Once you get beyond that, I mean, who can say at this point, 31 days after President Obama left office, that he's the 12th best president and not the 13th or 9th? I think it's a very, very little value, truly. So I don't make too much of it, and I don't really pay much attention to that either, because I think that, number one, there are a number of different cognitive biases towards the first, towards the most famous, towards the first ex-president, and of course President Obama fits into that. So I don't really pay too much attention to that. I also think that historical context is important. The actions that would make someone a good president in 1850 would be very different than in 1950 and very different than in 2017. And so it's also really difficult to compare what does it mean to be a best president, a top president, etc. Stability is something that is important. Employment is important. But, think about this. We are undoubtedly heading towards significant technological unemployment. Technological unemployment being, as a result of technology, jobs are being destroyed. It's very likely that we are not going to have the automation job killer problem solved as it grows in terms of being an issue. So it's very likely that there's going to be a period of time where our unemployment rate on paper goes quite high. Will it definitively be representative of a so-called bad president? I don't know. It's going to be a totally unique historical circumstance when it comes to technology. In the past has always created so many new industries that the net job effect was a creator rather than a destroyer. We're beyond that now, okay? So I don't really know. I don't really know what's going to happen with that. What do you guys think about me banning a few people from the chat? I mean, there's some people that I haven't been looking at it for a while, and there's people that are just absolutely trolling here and just really, really annoying. I have to think about the entire moderation thing. Right now, we only have 564 people on the live stream, and it's already going pretty wild. And when we've had 1,000 people on these live streams that I've just done randomly, it is unbearable what is going on in that chat. And I know people want to use it. The counter to this is some of the trolls just want attention. And by doing anything, even now by talking about it, it seems like it's almost like a sexually arousing thing for some of these trolls, quite frankly, and it's sad. It really is sad that this is how they get off. It fires people up, and maybe it's better just to ignore them. And the truth is, if these live streams are going to get up to, hopefully they'll grow from 500 to 1,000 to 1,500 to 2,000 people live, I don't even know that the chat will be usable. I mean, I genuinely don't. I know there's a feature which is like slow down the chat, which I think doesn't let the same person post more than once every 60 seconds or something like that. Maybe that would be something to turn on, but I don't know. Maybe we need to get our some moderators or something like that. The problem is I just kind of do these when I feel like it, so it's hard to have moderators just waiting for me to connect to YouTube, but we'll work on that, okay? Schultzbot has sent a $5 super chat saying, Russian involvement in Syria, Russian and Trump collusion and anti-Muslim sentiment, oil, refugee hysteria. Are there some bigger picture issues here? Well, I've been talking about this for a while. The bigger picture issues in terms of Russian involvement are, and there's a really good interview on our channel with Molly McHugh, and she talks about this. We have to go beyond the specific micro action that Russia is involved in, okay? And really think more broadly about what the goals are. And if you go back to, there's writings from the 90s from Russia about geopolitics. And what they point out, quite accurately I would say, is that the real way to gain sort of a momentum and power and a powerful positioning with regard to the United States is cause chaos. Create events which make people doubt whether the United States is trustworthy, whether the United States sort of has it together. And I think that that's the broader goal of Russia's intervention here. If Donald Trump leads to the reduction of sanctions on Russia, great. I'm sure that they absolutely love it. However, if it just creates chaos and causes people to doubt whether the United States is really the player on the world stage that some people would assume them to be under Donald Trump, then that's really the broader goal, and that's something longer term that Russia may be wanting. Okay, we've got a bunch of different super chats here. Things are exploding. Let's see. Rest in peace, Abu Layla says, what are your thoughts on the YPG in Syria? Do you think that the U.S. will eventually betray them to appease Turkey because of their links to the PKK? I've been studying this and I'm not ready to take a position on it yet. I think that your instinct is very, very interesting, which is that the United States has a long track record of taking one side internationally when it sort of seems to make sense at the time, and then completely reversing that. This also involves giving weapons to people who then we ultimately end up going after because they used our own weapons against us, right? A lot of this stuff has backfired on the U.S., and sometimes it's sort of taking the loyalty aspect out of it, you can still make a pretty good geopolitical assessment of why that might be done. Okay, we have another super chat from Felipe Garcia, who says, when and if do you see Obama returning into the political fray, and when is it a good idea for him to return? I hope that President Obama is having a nice time windsurfing with Sir Richard Branson or whatever it was that he was doing, right? But I hope he gets re-involved sooner than later. He left office with a really high approval rating, and that's something that I hope he doesn't squander. And it would be great to see him re-involved sooner than later. I think that he absolutely would be able to get people catalyzed and activated in a serious manner if he were to reappear very, very soon. But you know what? He's probably glad that he's done. Isaiah Rowe sending a $35 super chat, record super chat that we've ever had. Which one of Trump's cabinet picks thus far would you say have been the absolute worst and are the most dangerous? Wow, that is really hard to say. I mean, there's one issue here that I don't think is being discussed in terms of any of the cabinet picks, which is which ones are truly independent and which are basically just puppets for Trump. Trump may well be a Russian puppet, and a lot of these cabinet members may not exactly be independent thinkers. And thinking about the fact that it's Trump, you have to assume that there have been conversations behind the scenes. Like, for example, listen, we're interested in Mr. Trump, Mr. President Trump is interested in you for this position, but you would need to sort of agree to X, Y, and Z preconditions, right? The idea of these preconditions. And so I think it's to be determined who's most dangerous. I think the Flynn stuff, Flynn clearly was compromised, right? He was clearly compromised, if not by Russia itself, by his own delusions of grandeur in terms of lying not only to Mike Pence, but also we've now found out lying to the FBI about the conversations he had with the Russian ambassador with regard to sanctions. Martha Stewart went to prison for lying to investigators, FBI investigators, about personal stock investments. Michael Flynn allegedly lied, as we found out today, to FBI investigators about issues of national sovereignty and security and the violation of the idea of the one president at a time policy, talking about sanctions as the unconfirmed selection for national security advisor for a yet uninaugurated president. Okay, so hugely dangerous in what's gone on so far. Okay, Jason Maher has sent a $5 super chat. What do you think the chances are that our country will be a dictatorship and or invaded or controlled by a foreign power? Okay, dictatorship by its very definition I think is very unlikely. Invaded by a foreign power in a military sense I think is very, very unlikely. And controlled by a foreign power, you could make the argument that a lot of what Donald Trump has been doing is already being controlled by a foreign power. So I think that the chances of that are incredibly high. It may already be happening, okay? We have a $20 super chat from Jacob Ball. What are your thoughts on the French election? Do you think Le Pen could win? If she did, would that make a Frexit likely? What do you think that would mean for the EU? Okay, I really, I love France. I love French culture. I've had some of the best vacations I've ever had in France. And part of what I associate with France is not being what it would be under Marine Le Pen. So I think that it is not the most likely thing that Marine Le Pen is going to win. But after seeing what happened with Donald Trump in the United States, I absolutely would not write it off. And I think that it was a mistake that was made in the United States to just write off President Trump altogether. And, you know, I'm partially guilty of this as well. I did not think that Donald Trump was going to win. And I think if we've learned anything from the election of Trump, it is don't write off that Marine Le Pen could win. Although I agree by and large with the polling, which is that you are not going to see Marine Le Pen win in France. Okay, I've gotten distracted talking politics, and I did not realize that we have a new David Pakman Show member. Big thank you to Kelly Good, who has signed up at davidpakman.com/membership. We have the coupon code I voted 17. It is available to you anytime. And thank yous and shout outs to people who sign up at davidpakman.com/membership during the live stream. Forthcoming, okay? So that will continue to anybody that signs up there. Okay, a couple of questions about my thoughts on the entire Bill Maher, Milo Yiannopoulos interview. And so on the regular show today, we dealt with mostly the Milo Yiannopoulos pedophilia scandal that's going on, which got him uninvited to CPAC, which got his book deal canceled, for which he received a $250,000 advance. And he has since resigned from Breitbart, where he was some kind of editor or something like that, okay? So we dealt with that earlier. I only mentioned a little bit the Bill Maher appearance. I found the Bill Maher appearance interesting and somewhat troubling in a sense, in the sense that I am not someone who is against interviewing people with outrageous views. I do it on my program. I think that there is absolutely no problem with interviewing people with extremist views, people you disagree with, etc. But the context has to be, if you want to be a sort of thinking and respectable person, that you think their ideas are absolutely and totally nuts. And there were some comments that Bill Maher made, which I think at one point I remember that he sort of likened Milo to Christopher Hitchens in some way, and I still don't understand what kind of harebrained analogy he was trying to make. I thought that was sort of odd and concerning. I also thought that I got, two of the three panelists plus Bill Maher said some combination of "go F yourself" or "F you" to Milo, and although it was entertaining and funny, I think that only further strengthens the idea that Milo is the victim. People are already throwing around that the entire drunken peasants thing was a hit job, and I am truly concerned that there is going to be blowback from this. Now, increasingly, when you get into pedophilia, it does get more and more difficult to find people to sort of say, hey, we love what you do. Forget about the pedophilia comments. We want to hire you to do X, Y, and Z. I don't know exactly who it would be. I really don't. But I worry that there is going to be some victimization complex that may end up benefiting Milo in some way, shape, or form. So I don't know. And I know that there are people in the chat who disagree with me. I do want to say that Larry Wilmore, who was one of the people who said "go F yourself" during the thing, whatever. I'm not offended by that, right? I don't care. I think it's tell people to go F themselves. It's not an argument, but it's I don't have any problem with it whatsoever. Larry Wilmore, my impression of Larry Wilmore was significantly strengthened by his appearance on that panel. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. I thought that he was there and rebutting so many of the things that Milo Yiannopoulos was saying with more than just "go F yourself." And the other person I thought was great, his name is escaping me, but I put him on my people to invite for an interview list, Malcolm Nance. Malcolm Nance was the guy on the far left of the panel, so not the right-wing nut who was sitting on the right, and not Larry Wilmore, but the third guy. I thought that he was absolutely brilliant in terms of explaining why those who seek to write off the entire Russia story just genuinely don't know what the hell they're talking about. He was really, really good, and I'm going to reach out to him hopefully tomorrow, and we're booked pretty far out right now on the show. But I'm looking forward to inviting him on the show and hope that we will have him on the show. Along those lines, we have some really good interviews on the program. Today we had Luke Vargas, who was just on the chat and watching the stream. We had Luke Vargas join us from Mexico City, talked about what's going on there in Mexico in terms of the potential Trump sanctions, tariffs, et cetera, economic impacts. And that was a really great interview it's on today's podcast, TV show, radio show, and the standalone YouTube clip will be going up soon. Tomorrow we'll be speaking to Bill Oglesby. Bill Oglesby is an expert on gerrymandering, and we're going to talk about what is gerrymandering, how did it happen, how skewed is it towards Republicans right now. Then on Wednesday, wait a second, do these dates make sense? 23rd. Okay, something maybe got messed up in the scheduling. In any case, starting on Thursday, we'll be speaking to Stephen Guyanet about sugar addiction and obesity and diet and a bunch of really interesting stuff. On Monday, we'll have Mike Papantonio on the show. He just settled a major case of huge corporate wrongdoing, and we're going to talk about that with Mike Papantonio. We'll be speaking later next week to Marcelo Gleiser, who is a professor and also a Brazilian guy, of all things, go figure. And we'll be talking to him about whether science knows right from wrong. That's something that Sam Harris has spoken on. We'll be talking about it with Professor Marcelo Gleiser. We also have Kathy O'Neill scheduled to be on the show. She is known to many in the audience as the Math Babe. I think her website is mathbabe.org. Yes, it is. So we're going to be having Kathy O'Neill on the program. We're going to be having Ronald Fry on. Ronald Fry is a very interesting guy, military veteran, who actually lived in the Middle East and sort of did a different type of political diplomacy, which is very, very interesting. We're also going to be speaking to Professor Matthew Liao about the neuroscience of morality. In other words, how does morality relate to activity in the brain? And I think that that's going to be absolutely, absolutely fascinating. So a lot of great interviews coming up. Lyle Frappier, or Frappier from Canada, sending a $2 super chat saying, what do I think about the Omarosa hiring? I think it is absolutely insane and ridiculous, truly. And some people saying this is Trump trying to pretend that he's a friend of black people or whatever. I don't even care about that. I really don't care about that. It is just absolutely absurd. And she has struck me as one of the most off-putting people that has come out of The Apprentice. Not that I know that many people who have come out of The Apprentice. And I think it's absolutely and utterly deplorable. Membership program mostly funded by membership. You can sign up at davidpakman.com/membership. There is a coupon code you can use for a 40% discount. That coupon code is IVoted17. IVoted17 gives you 40% off. And indeed, Chris Ward has just signed up, although opting to pay full price and not using that coupon code. But by all means, IVoted17 is the coupon code you can use to get to a 40% discount off of membership, and it's absolutely extraordinary. Also, Christina Escobedo just now signing up using the coupon code IVoted17. So a lot of people signing up. A sort of a normal amount of David Cuckman, you're a cuck, and this is fake news type comments in the chat today. A little bit lighter on anti-Semitism, which can be refreshing. That absolutely can be refreshing. Often it's the anti-Semitic stuff that really goes crazy. And so that's nice. Thank you for people who slightly laid off calling me a cuck. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this live stream. I'll do another one very, very soon. Hope you'll tune into the show tomorrow.